Hello, today I am going to talk about system design and preliminaries to consider prior to design a system. In order to design a system efficiently, first of all, you have to understand the business domain for which you want to design your system. You have to get information about the domain, understand the domain for which the system will be designed, collect and understand the sufficient domain-specific knowledge to design the system better in the later phases. Then you should collect business requirements for the domain that you have gained knowledge and from the clients or end users. So get the business requirements from the end users or client. Create a business requirement document and verify the business requirement document from the stakeholders. After that, functional and non-functional requirements. You have to identify the functional and non-functional requirements. Understand the functional and non-functional requirements of the system first. Functional requirements define what a system does, such as feature, tasks, actions, actually what the system performs. And functional requirements focus on user needs, for example, login, report generation, etc. Non-functional requirements define how well the system performs, such as quality attributes, constraints. Functional requirements focus on user needs, whereas non-functional requirements focus on system performance, scalability, security, usability, loading time, security standards. Create document for functional and non-functional requirements for the system and verify from the end users or client whether these are correct or wrong, whether any additional features need to be added. After that, correlate the collected knowledge and requirements. Connect all the gathered knowledge and requirements such as business domain knowledge, functional and non-functional requirements. Consider all the information to prepare a system specification document that you will use to design a system later. Then, system specification. Clearly defined business goals, identify stakeholder needs, comprehensive functional or non-functional requirements, agreed upon constraints. There can be many constraints such as data constraints, storage constraints, or many type of constraints, user constraints, all the things. And ensure and verify that resulting specification is unambiguous and actionable. So system specification should contain all these points. After you specify the system and determine the system specification, then before the system design, you should align the business goals. You should avoid over engineering so that nothing more or less, or you should not make the system complex. Use system specification to prepare the system design document. Essential for high-level design or low-level design. So, using the system specification and all the non-functional and functional requirements, you should design a low-level design or high-level design. High-level design will actually highlight the main system characteristics and other things related to domain, and also the system requirements related to memory, hardware, and also the security and all the other things. And low level design will contain the depth level of each sides. Before you design your system, there are few prerequisites that you should consider. For example, consider how many concurrent users will use this system. Determine the type and location of users. What type of data should be stored? For example, relational or non-relational database. Based on this, you should select your database. Here there is an example like SQL or NoSQL. Data storage requirements based on the type of data, because not all the application or not all the modules of a particular application need the same amount of data, or also need same type of data. So based on the type of data, you should select the particular correct data storage platform. You should consider what should be the caching mechanism, such as Redis or CDNs. If your system actually needs to apply the caching mechanism, or if your clients or stakeholder needs caching, determine what operations should be synchronous and what are the asynchronous. You have to separate the synchronous and asynchronous operations and handle in a separate way. Handle in each synchronous or asynchronous operations in an efficient way. So you have to identify the part of the business implementation which you should synchronous implementation and which you should asynchronous implementation. Consider messaging queues strategy for asynchronous operation. So for messaging, you have, for example, Kafka or RabbitMQ. You can use those tools or any other cloud tools available from Azure or Amazon or AWS, I mean. What should be the logging mechanism? You should also consider the logging mechanism. You should consider whether your system is read heavy or write heavy. Determine which parts of the system are read heavy and which are write heavy. Front end and back end consideration. So you have to actually analyze what you should consider for the front end and what you should consider for the back end. Consider all the functional and non-functional requirements. Consider constraints, consistency such as strong or eventual consistency. For example, strong consistency is needed when you have financial transaction, or eventual consistency is needed where actually when you need to count the likes of a particular web page. So you have to determine in your system which part of this, which part is actually needed for such consistency. You should have to consider availability or reliability, scalability, performance, and security. You should consider concurrency and hardware requirements, cost limitation or specific hardware or cloud requirements. You should consider regulatory compliance. For example, you can have data constraints such as not all the data should actually be shown to all part of the country, or should not go beyond your own country, or should not go beyond your particular organization for which you are building the system. So you have to actually maintain those compliance. You have to consider the external dependencies, whether any external API or tools you need to use. Also, you should determine the system, whether the system should be distributed or monolithic. It is not necessary that all the system should be a distributed system or all the systems should be a monolithic. So based on the user needs and system requirements, you should decide your system so that you can build the system efficiently for your client needs. After considering all the prerequisites, then pick the right tools and technologies, frameworks to develop the system. You have to consider scope of your system, the load of your system, how many users concurrently will use this system. You have to consider the data type of a particular modules of your entire system. You have to consider the latency that is actually acceptable for your system. You have to design the scale of your system. You have to determine the scale of your system. I mean, the scaling means whether this application is supporting the peak time or off peak time. So based on this, you have to scale your system. Also, you have to consider whether the user who will use your system is regional user or a global user. I mean, whether your system will be used globally or regionally. Based on that, you have to consider and determine your system design. So these are the highlights that should be considered when you design your system and you build an efficient application. Thank you.